now we're going to dive in and talk about how to succeed in the remote environment. Not just a remote environment, but the remote environment. What does that mean? I don't know, but it was a distinction I thought was important to make for all of you here now. So first, what's Codesmith? You probably know what Codesmith is at this point, judging from the folks that introduced themselves. However, some folks might be here and haven't introduced themselves and have no idea. So Codesmith is a center for software engineering excellence. I think that's what the slide says. You could think of it as a boot camp. That's usually what people refer to it as. It's okay to refer to it as a boot camp. It comes in 3 flavors, 2 of which are primarily based, or used to be, on site. They're in New York and Los Angeles. I went through the Los Angeles one in the before times, before COVID, when we had stuff on site. But right now, both New York and LA, those full-time programs are now being done remotely because COVID. At some point in the future, we're going to go back to being on site. Not sure what the United States is looking like for that process. So timing, who knows? But it will eventually go back on site. I know for the next 2 cohorts, I believe, both in New York and LA, they're going to be full remote cohorts. So something that we've also done is anyone that signs up for a remote cohort can do that, and they don't have to necessarily live in New York or LA. If they want to take the classes in that time zone, they can do so, whatever time zone they happen to be in. So full-time programs, we now basically have 2 remote options, one in the New York time zone and one in an LA time zone. Those are both 12 weeks long. Those are the classic full-time immersive programs. The 3rd flavor is the newest flavor. It's the one that I teach. It's the part-time remote program. It's 39 weeks. It's 39 weeks because it's designed for people that are busy full-time, whether that's working a job full-time, caretaking for family, or doing other stuff. It's designed for people that are working full-time. Those classes are in the evenings, Pacific Standard Time, 5 to 8 p.m. Pacific, and on Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., also Pacific. So you get together those 5 days a week, and the design of the class is very much that there's no homework. There's minimal homework. Usually 1 hour a week. There's your hack hour you have to do every week. And in some of the later portions of the program, there's sometimes 2 or 3 hack hours in a given week. So you may have 2 or 3 hours of homework. However, the majority, everything that we do in core curriculum, all the projects, all that stuff is given time in the class hours. That's because it's designed for people that are working and busy full time. We don't want to overload you on homework. That was the thing that was really important to me. So that's the part-time flavor. That's the one that I teach. Again, 39 weeks long. That's what we do here. Those are the flavors we come in. So what we focus on at Codesmith that some of you are already aware of, but for those that aren't, we focus on turning you into an autonomous problem solver. The way that you do this is you learn how to learn. Yes, we do it through the lens of JavaScript. Yes, you get a lot of experience with the JavaScript syntax. Yes, you can easily explain the difference between var, let, and const by the time you graduate. Great, that's wonderful. But bigger picture, what's really, really important is that you learn how to be an autonomous problem solver. I went through the program, absolutely loved it, and it was incredibly, incredibly difficult. It's really difficult, and it's supposed to be. It's difficult to work in the industry because you have to be passionate to learn and grow. You will face the unknown most days that you're at work. That's the career field that this is. However, it's the unknown of like, how do I implement WebSockets? How do I implement solid testing for WebSockets in my Node server? Those are the kind of questions that you'll be asking yourself and needing to go find out. Now, right now, you might not know what WebSockets are. You might not know how to write tests. You might not really be familiar with a Node server. All of that is fine. You will get there because you will learn how to onboard information quickly and get under the hood and understand the core concepts of what's going on. We do this at Codesmith through block-driven development. So we give you lectures about the concepts and the inspirations, the motivations for why things exist. And then you work through challenges with a pair programming partner to implement solutions based on our specific set of challenges to get you there. And yes, our challenges directly put you into issues. We put you deliberately into blocks. We make a logical leap and say, okay, now do it this way. And it's like, what? How? You didn't tell me how. That's exactly the point. We're not going to tell you how on every little thing in the challenges. We're going to make you hit those blocks, and you're going to work with your pair programming partner. How do I figure this out? You're going to look at docs. How do I figure this out? You are also going to have access to the help desk, which I'll talk more about later. So that's the style, the inspiration, the pedagogy of Codesmith. That's what we do. Now I'm going to talk a bit about how you can succeed in a remote environment, how Codesmith implements some of these techniques, so you can see if Codesmith's a good fit for you. But these techniques and these ideas work everywhere. If you want to start a group that's like super into cross stitch or making fun stuff like doing woodworking, you can take all these and apply it to whatever area of learning you want. But this is critical stuff about how Codesmith does it and what we found to be really successful for everyone for a remote environment. So first up, number one way to be successful, have a big picture of yourself in a slide that you present to other people. It really helps. No, I did not put this slide deck together, and it's deeply embarrassing that my hand's waving in front of a weird picture of, I have no idea what's going on there. But let's talk about engaging with the community, because as I forgot who mentioned, but someone did mention engaging with community. I think Dean, you mentioned how much you like working with others. And sometimes, at least for me, the big challenge with being remote is how to engage with that community, how to still have that sense of connection and community, because that is super important to Codesmith. So we have a couple things that I want to highlight here that we're doing in abundance at Codesmith, and you can take and apply to whatever space. Number one is communicating with intention. Now, communicating with intention means that sometimes you're not going to want to communicate. It's going to feel like, I don't want to hassle them. I feel like I'm being a nuisance, or I've already said too much, or I'm just tired and I don't want to. That's a thing you have to push through. You have to push through it, because our ability to connect is no longer as simple as seeing one another in the same common space to make food, in our kitchen, in our eating area at one of the campuses. It's no longer as simple as bumping into each other in the hallway or after class sometime grabbing a drink. We can't do that much anymore. So we have to be intentional with our time and our communication. Something that we do at Codesmith, we set people up with mentors and mentees. So when you're coming into the immersive programs, there's someone to connect with and just chat about life, maybe questions about the program, and be your number one contact. We facilitate that with like some gift cards and some coffee stuff, neat. But the real value there is the bond that you form with another person. That sort of idea of getting together to have coffee, even though we're not able to go to a coffee shop anymore or just like hang out and grab lunch, you can still do that over Zoom like we do here, but one-on-one. You can still catch up on something like Slack, and that kind of stuff is emphasized in Codesmith. And I encourage you to emphasize that in whatever community that you're connecting with and learning and growing it. We do at Codesmith specifically, we do group lunches. So everyone comes together to have lunch, and we go into smaller little breakout rooms. So there's 5 or 6 of us in a room, kind of like sitting at a table in a lunchroom, which is how it was in the Codesmith LA campus when I went through it. So we do that kind of thing for lunches. We do shout outs. We do a family dinner every Monday night in the full-time program, and a family lunch every week in the part-time program. That's on Saturdays. So those things are really important to us. We have mindfulness sessions. There are movie nights in the programs, times to just hang out and spend time with one another. These are essential to you forming that connection and growing together in whatever thing you're learning, whether that's JavaScript or something else. So those pieces, super, super, super important. Up next, bringing positivity. This is so much easier said than done. It's really easy to be tired, to be not feeling it, to be not wanting to engage. I feel those feelings. Sometimes it happens. But how can you bring your best self? How can you make the time that you're spending in this online community the best part of your day, or just a better part of your day, a good part of your day. There's a lot to that, but making sure you take short breaks is one of the things that we emphasize a lot at Codesmith. So taking short breaks, go on a walk, stare at the wall, open the window, whatever it takes. Those kind of short breaks allow you to kind of mentally reset and be ready to prepare and engage again when you're doing pair programming, when you're attending a lecture, when you're working through a presentation that you've got to give. Any of those things, it's important to take those breaks. That, for me, is the flip side to bringing the positivity, is to be able to disconnect and relax and kind of take those breaks. So we emphasize and encourage that. Up next, being a role model. So we ask this of every resident that comes through the program, and every resident steps up and does it. What I mean by that is we ask folks to bring their best selves and try to lead by example. This is in the process of maybe you know something about a particular unit. Maybe you're working through data structures and you've already spent some time with data structures. You have a little bit of a background in computer science and you're familiar with things like a stack or a queue or a binary search tree. So part of being a role model is not having that knowledge and being like, aha, I am better than you. I know this thing and you don't. That shit does not fly at Codesmith. Does not work here, friends. However, what you want to be doing is leading by example. You want to be asking leading questions, not giving people the answer, not saying, aha, you've got to do depth first traversal like this. No, you want to be asking leading questions so people can come to that understanding on their own while you don't flaunt any knowledge that you have. It's very much not a competition at Codesmith. We're very invested in everyone bringing each other up. That's why I still have connections with and care about and maintain friendships with the people that I went through Codesmith with. One of my dear friends in my production project, mind you, this was from Codesmith. He came from a background of working in museums and art curation in museums. We went through Codesmith together. We worked exclusively on JavaScript. Our production project was in GraphQL, which is a framework that you can use inside the world of JavaScript for back-end stuff, neat. But he got a job at IBM as a Python developer after Codesmith. Not because he had a whole bunch of Python experience, but because he knew how to be an autonomous problem solver, and he relied on everyone else in his cohort, myself included, to prepare for interviews, to reach out and ask for references for networking. That all that led to him and helped him get his job at IBM, which is super cool. So this network and these connections that you make here can last a lifetime if you want them to. So being that role model and setting that example early, everyone can help rise each other up. It's really, really wonderful to see. So that's what I encourage you to do at Codesmith, any place you're learning online as well. And then finally, helping when you can. This, I think, is part of being that role model, but helping when you can. There's a help desk in Codesmith. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But if you know something or see someone struggling with a concept, maybe you're really comfortable with CSS or styling and someone else isn't, you can step in and help out just when you see that person struggling. Say, hey, is there something I could help you answer, or help answer for you, or lead you in the right direction? Do you have any questions about this? That sort of stepping up and offering that assistance, really, really beneficial, and sets you up to be wonderful as an engineering lead should you want to do stuff like that in the future. You get the opportunity to cement your own understanding and learn more by teaching. Learning through teaching is absolutely incredible. We do that all the time at Codesmith. And the person that gets the most benefit from all the workshops you've ever seen, always, 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 is the teacher. So you have the opportunity to do that in Codesmith and, again, in whatever community you're connected with. Up next, this remote setting so we talked about like how to engage in a community, yay, but sometimes you won't always be connected to a community 24/7, right? You're not gonna be pair programming with someone all the time. You're gonna need to have some structure in your own day to bring about your ability to achieve your goals long-term. That connection and that community is a huge piece of it, but there are other pieces of it as well. So number one, setting up that structure for your day. This is achieved wonderfully in Codesmith, but I hope that you can take this idea and apply it everywhere. If you come through Codesmith, great. If you're working in another setting, try to apply these concepts of having a really solid structure. Codesmith provides a structure, whether you're in the part-time or full-time program. Codesmith provides a structure where we give a detailed breakdown. You have a calendar with a minute-by-minute breakdown of what you should be working on and where you should be focused every day you're in the program. It's a lot. The calendar is intense, and it's maintained in a really rigorous way. That helps provide you some structure and get you focused on what you need to focus on and learn. You also then have a group of other people doing the same thing that helps your accountability. I find that the structure piece is one of the most valuable pieces to being successful remotely. I say this because I come from a background of traditionally not being awesome at connecting and working remotely. Back in my previous career, I was working as a contract manager for a national nonprofit that did tech software as a service. So I was managing the LA contract and lived out here in Los Angeles. I was the only person in the Pacific time zone. I had no other coworkers, and it was a struggle to stay focused. It was a struggle to get my work done on time. It was a struggle to care because I didn't have that community and I didn't have that structure. Later, I got some more of that structure and started working full-time at that national nonprofit for LGBTQ media advocacy as a front-end developer. That was super cool. That helped me out. But things changed when I went through Codesmith. I found much more out about my limits of how much I could push myself and how much I could really benefit and grow from structure. Codesmith kind of held my hand in that way. So I'm really, really happy to see that have a similar effect, or see a similar effect that can have on other people. So it's here at Codesmith. Take that and apply it as best you can. You can see it in wonderful examples in Codesmith, but it's out there in other techniques as well. Reaching out often is critical. It's real easy to feel distance from other people in your community when you're plugging away working on something. I feel like that's kind of one of the biggest challenges that we face working in remote settings in general, is this pulling back and this distancing from one another. I feel like it happens naturally without a commitment to communication. What this can often result in our setting, in a Codesmith setting, is this feeling of imposter syndrome. Now, some of you may or may not have heard of imposter syndrome before. Imposter syndrome is this idea that you don't deserve to be where you are. You didn't earn any of the place and the accolades, whatever you're doing, you don't really have a right to be there. Almost as if you're about to be busted and like discovered as a fake or a fraud. Like, you're not a real engineer, you're a faker. You don't have a real background in this. Someone's gonna discover you for a fraud. That's kind of the feeling around it. And when I tell you it happens to everyone, I am dead serious. It happens to everyone. Not just at Codesmith, but everywhere. Some people don't have the same names for it or same words for it, and that's okay. But at Codesmith, we call it the imposter syndrome. And we in fact have a full lecture on it in the core curriculum. We talk about imposter syndrome. It comes up a lot when you're trying to push yourself to learn a new thing. And the number one way to help manage that, because it's not a thing that you're going to magically make disappear and go away, but you can help manage that. And one of the ways to manage that is to connect with other people and share that feeling. Like, oh, I feel like I'm falling behind and I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, I shouldn't even be here. Being able to say that to another person in your cohort, really, really powerful. Really helps ease that burden. To be able to say that to someone that's in Codesmith working like myself, if you're in the part-time program, or a fellow, some people that you may interact with quite a bit when you're in the program, being able to say that to anyone and share that is an important step in your ability to manage imposter syndrome. That requires that you reach out often. When you're not feeling great, when you're feeling disconnected, say that. And you can say that on Slack. It's a wonderful tool. We use it all the time. This coming prepared bit, I think, kind of ties into the bringing positivity thing from the last slide. And what I mean by that is coming prepared requires effort and energy. You've got to take this seriously. And It can be motivating for folks to take it seriously when they pay money to attend. Yes, that can work for some people. However, it doesn't work for everyone. I've seen people that pay money to be there and don't still feel that desire or that urge to come prepared. Okay, there are other things that you need to be able to focus on or reach towards to make sure that you're taking this seriously and coming prepared. One of the things that I think can help most with that is to know that the experience you have is very much informed by the community that you foster around you, in your cohort, in the cohort above you, and in the cohort that comes in after you. This community setting is really the secret sauce of any successful learning environment, how you can collaborate and have this connected community. So coming prepared means resting, means getting enough sleep, means eating as best you can. Yes, 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 all of those things. But also think about what it means to come prepared so you can be ready to be your best self when someone else has a question, when someone else is confused about how Express servers work, but maybe you understand that. Your ability to come prepared helps them by you having an opportunity to teach, to learn yourself and submit your own understanding, and them to learn from you explaining something. There's nothing more powerful than explaining the concept that you just are starting to understand and doing your best to put that into words, and then seeing that be the way, the explanation style that makes it click for that other person. That is incredibly exciting and exhilarating. I hope that can be a piece that inspires you to come prepared if the cost of a program like this doesn't. That community piece is incredibly important. So last one on this is just a segue onto my next slide, taking care of your physical space. Physical space is something not everyone has access to in the same way. Housing is not a human right. Housing is a thing we have to pay for in this society. So we don't all have access to decent space. However, doing what you can with what you have is critical to your success in this program and anywhere. So making the most of your physical space to create this kind of learning sanctuary, create a space where you sit to go to learn, whether that means putting up some small barriers behind you to make it look like you're in your own private room. I've seen some people have changing doors that they put up around them, behind them, so they're in kind of their own little private space when they're in class. Whatever works. That person I know is in a studio apartment with their spouse, so they need that little carved out space so they can focus and connect. Whatever that means for you. For me, that means plants. You see the plant over here behind me? I want it, it looks nice. I want it near me. That's why it's there. You may also notice, if you're studious, it's a fake plant. I also don't want to take care of it and make sure it stays alive and water it. So I know who I am. I want some green stuff, but I also don't want to have to take care of it. Boom, plant. I also have another little plant at my desk. I want some more green stuff around me. Again, a fake plant. So know what works for you and what's inspiring and connecting for you, and help foster that bit of connection to your physical space so you can have that learning sanctuary. Finally, maintaining that good health. I feel like this is the one I keep coming back to. It's really easy to feel overwhelmed in the current climate that we're in, the current situation. There's so much going on, concurrently, all the time. So whatever you can do to maintain your health as best you can, this means getting enough sleep. This means taking breaks, going on walks. This means eating enough, yes. However, when all of that still doesn't let you feel wonderful, maybe sometimes you'll feel sick, maybe you'll feel down mentally, maybe you feel down physically, whatever that is. When you're in Codesmith, and what I encourage you to do wherever you are, when you're in a program, a learning environment, take the time to acknowledge when you don't feel well and rest and recover and recuperate. At Codesmith, we have a pretty strict attendance policy. However, we encourage and emphasize and push people to take the time off when they're not feeling well. This was something that This is a thing that applies both to our residents that come through the program and for staff that work at Codesmith. This is something I struggle with personally because I'm always like, I could do it. I could push through. I could just be a little sick and still work. And like, it's not a great idea. I get constant reminders from coworkers, and I've been better in Codesmith about taking that time off, taking like, oh, I need a day. I feel terrible. I feel like I might be coming down with something. Taking that time off to try to rest and recuperate and maintain my health. It's been incredibly beneficial here. We encourage that for the residents that come through the program, and I encourage y'all to do that in whatever space that you're in. So that's high level, big picture stuff about kind of what Codesmith does, but also what could work everywhere. Now, I want to talk a bit about Codesmith's specific learning environment, some of the details, some of the nuances. I reckon this is some of the stuff that y'all came here to learn and are most interested in. So if that's the case, awesome. Know that this list is not exhaustive and it's not everything. So after I talk about this stuff, yay, more me talking. After that will be time for questions. So if you have those questions, be thinking of them, write them down. I'll ask you to raise your hand and I'll call on folks. We'll have a whole time for Q&A. Happy to answer questions. Let's dive through this first and then we can get to those questions. Up first is our immersive environment. This simply means that we have incredibly structured and rigorous hours for all of the residents that come through the program, for their classes, for their lectures. All of our lectures are live, connected, and our pair programming. All of the units and the challenges that we work on in the program are done in pairs. You work together with someone else. This forces you to grow in your technical communication and your understanding. It's not enough to get a challenge to, or to solve a particular challenge, to get it to pass a test and like, yeah, it works. It's not enough for a thing to work. You have to know why it works. You also have to know and be able to explain why it works to someone else using words, using language. You do this through repeated pair programming. There's in fact one solo project in the program, but it is called the solo project and it's meant to let you struggle in a solo setting first, and then you go back to pair programming, working in groups where you're pair programming, sometimes working alone in groups, depends on what the task is, what ticket you have, what item you're working on, but working in groups is incredibly important, and we facilitate all of that in the immersive environment. Our mentorship and non-coding experiences, this is something I was not prepared for as being as impactful on me as it was. So, mentorship, as I mentioned before, everyone gets a mentor and mentee. That relationship always happens in the Codesmith programs, which is wonderful. I had a great mentor, someone I went through CS prep with when I went through the program, but they just got into a cohort ahead of me. So that process allows you to facilitate that connection with someone and really have your go-to person to spend time with. Also, we have these non-coding experiences, and this was the bit that I was not prepared for. We have this thing I think it's every 2 weeks, called Circles, where you spend 30 minutes talking to your cohort mates and someone at Codesmith, but you spend some time in a small group talking about anything not coding related. Really, really helpful. You get to know who they are as people. I think my first Circles, I spent time with some of my cohort mates and the lead technical mentor for my cohort, and he asked us about our 5-year plan and our goals for our lives. Cool as hell. I got to know so much more about the people that I was coding with based on those questions and that discussion. We also sometimes just play games, like Jackbox games or code names, whatever it is, things that we can play online. Hang out and spend time with each other. We also have meditation hours. We have lunch and learn programs. A lot of wonderful stuff happening at Codesmith. That's some of the non-coding experiences. Oh, also we do drinks every Thursday night in the full-time program and once a month on Thursdays in the part-time program. Again, sometimes it's a talent show, sometimes it's just games. Usually it's involving some drinks, maybe some wine. Lately, I've been enjoying some rum chata, so that's usually what I'm having on our monthly drink nights. Whatever it is, it's a great time to connect. I think last week, one of our fellows in the part-time program prepared a song and sang a song and played piano for us. So that was great. Unfortunately now everyone is demanding that I sing. I don't want to, but that's a different discussion. So empathetic engineering up next. This is the space and the intention that we have at Codesmith that we very much value of making space to focus on thoughtful communication and careful interaction. So everyone that comes into Codesmith has to be focused on and value the building up of everyone and the non-competitive nature. One of the biggest red flags for me is someone that like is showboating or acting like they know more than other people or like they're better than other people. It's not conducive towards a growth mindset for everyone in the community. We also set aside some specific times in our remote programs. These are both the 2 full-time remote programs right now and the part-time program, where we have something called collaborative coding. So this idea is based off of what happened in on-site programs, which was maybe you're working on a unit and it's challenging, there are difficulties, and you and your pair programming partner are working, wonderful, but you're running into challenges and you want to just kind of get up and go talk to another group at another table. When we're in the remote setting, we can't do that. It's not super simple to facilitate that. However, collaborative coding is this idea where we put folks together in larger groups, usually groups of 4 or 5, and ask them all to work together and chat about the code that they're working on and the particular challenge that they're facing. This is like a facilitated group check-in time, so you could kind of get up and walk over to someone else's desk. It's worked really, really well. It was kind of one of the things I was most concerned about missing out on in a remote setting that we've been able to implement, and everyone that's gone through it in the part-time program and the full-time programs have said that they really liked it. So that is wonderful. I scrolled on my mouse wheel, which is not at all what I intended. I intended to grab the thing and move down. Up next, the mental health sessions. Those are incredibly helpful and partially implement the circles model. So we have circles that helps with mental health, but we also have everyone on staff being available and ready to chat about anything that you want to chat about. We're kind of an always available group, and there's no wrong door to turn to. You can chat with me, you can chat with someone on the operations team. Everyone is down to listen and facilitate whatever you need to have time off, to work through a problem that is challenging. Maybe there's another resident that's not behaving well. We talk about all of it, and we make those tough decisions when we have to about someone's conduct, if someone's conduct is out of line. We've done it before. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it's so important to maintain a community of support and growth where everyone feels safe. So we do all that stuff here. Finally, help desk. I've gotten to it. I'm now going to talk about help desk. The help desk structure at Codesmith is very intentional. If you've ever used Stack Overflow, you may have experienced some of the processes that they require when you write a Stack Overflow question, which is, what am I trying to make work? What's my expected result? What am I getting instead? What am I getting? It's not the expected result. What have I tried to fix the problem? And what do I suspect is the actual problem? These 4 things. These 4 things are things you have to fill out every time you want help at Codesmith. There's a couple reasons for this. There's a whole Slack channel with this help desk template where you post your help desk questions. But the reason for it is, I don't know, I'd say about 6 or 7 times out of 10, so 60 to 70% of the time, when you fill out those 4 questions, you answer your question, whatever it is, yourself as you fill that out. Cool. The idea behind this is that you're teaching yourself and you're getting that memory of teaching yourself by asking yourself questions, how to solve a problem. That's wonderful, because at a certain point, you're not going to be at Codesmith anymore. You're not going to be in a place where you can just ask someone for the answer. You're going to have to figure out the answer yourself. Now, when you're working on that, when you're in your training wheels mode and you're growing that skill, you use the help desk. Oftentimes, you'll be able to answer your own question when writing the help desk. Other times, that's not the case. So Codesmith has the instructors and the fellows watching the help desk channel, and we will come in and join your Zoom room. Fun fact about the help desk and what happens when fellows join to answer a help desk. Our goal as people helping out and following up on a help desk is not to answer your question. Our goal is not to answer your question. I'm so sorry. That's not what we're there to do. Instead, what we're there to do is we're there to ask you questions to get you thinking in the direction so you get to the answer yourself. We're not going to come in. Nothing makes me happier than being able to swoop in and saying, aha, I know the answer. You missed a semicolon here. That's usually never the answer. But I'm not going to come in. No one's going to come in and just like give you an answer. What we're going to come in is ask you a question like, so where in the code do you think something's going wrong? Okay, why do you think that? All right, so what's the error that we're getting? We're getting undefined when we expect to get a string. Wonder why. Let's back up through the code and start figuring out where this undefined is coming from. That is the kind of help that we provide in Help Desk. Again, this is all in support of that block-driven development to help you get the mental calluses to be an autonomous problem solver yourself. We're happy to help out, and that's the point of us coming in to ask these leading questions. Eventually, you will be at a point where you ask yourself those leading questions before even going to the help desk. We start to try to train your process by behavior and lead by example in that way. So when we can do that as fellows, it's a joy, but also if you know the answer to something and a cohort mate does not, you get to partake in that as well. You get to ask leading questions to help someone come to an understanding themselves. So much more powerful to come to an understanding yourself versus having someone tell you the answer with a quick link to a Stack Overflow or just say the answer to you. Not a long-term benefit to the learner. So that is the help desk style. We use that in Slack. You read it in Slack. And then everyone has, all the residents of the part-time programs and the full-time programs, everyone has access to a premium Zoom room that has unlimited time, no amount of cap for the number of people in that room. We just hop in that room because it's your room and you're already in there to chat with you about this. So you have access to your own premium Zoom account, which is super, super helpful. That is the Codesmith remote learning environment. There's a lot to it. I have rambled for the better part of 40 minutes, at least. So I hope there are some questions. You may have them, you may not. If you do, you can physically raise your hand, that works. Or you could click on the, the attendees? The participants tab, When you click on the participants tab, there's a little icon that says raise hand. It'll make a little blue hand icon show up in the top right of your window. I can call on you that way. Whatever works. Who's got questions? Greg, I see a hand up.
I guess my question is, when you were describing your Codesmith experience, you were saying that you bonded a lot with your cohort, and then I guess the physical part of it, like going to the campus, is very important. Do you think the remote learning environment is like an adequate, equivalent to those in-person experiences?
Great question, Greg. So I struggle with equivalency, right? I don't want to say it's equivalent because technically and literally it can't be equivalent. However, it can be comparable. And the online environment that we've seen in these last, 4 cohorts we've had start, 3 cohorts, has been really, really inspiring. Honestly, I thought this would be a big detriment to the remote community. I thought that's where we'd really, there'd be a gap, there'd be something missing because of that difference. But what I've seen is when people take to heart the kind of stuff that is in this presentation, which is bringing positivity, bringing your best self, being engaged as you can be, what happens is you make those connections and those bonds because you spend time hanging out at lunch together. Yes, you're all in separate spaces, and yes, I hope you mute yourself as you chew your food, but you do hang out and you start talking. You BS about, oh, what'd you get up to this weekend? Oh, is that a guitar in the background? You play guitar? Cool, show me that. Talk to me about stuff. That's where those bonds start. And they happen at lunch. So lunch and dinner at Codesmith happens, and you can interact with folks, or you can, not need a break, go away, do your own thing for lunch. It happens. But those are wonderful times. There's also this drive. It's so very common for folks at Codesmith to go above and beyond kind of what is already kind of outlined as the schedule. Right now, the schedule for the full-time programs is 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on Saturdays. That's the full-time schedule. It is very common to see people continuing to work and pair program and connect with one another well into like 10 p.m. Pacific time or Eastern, whatever time zone you're in. So that happened in the on-site program, right? There were lots of times that I hung out and helped answer some questions for someone, and then that turned into me eating another bowl of Cheerios and playing Street Fighter on the Super Nintendo. But we have less of that Street Fighter on the Super Nintendo bit and more people hanging out and spending time with each other, whether that's working through challenges or just hanging out doing movie and mask nights. They happen on nights that aren't Thursdays. Sometimes we'll just all, 5 or 6 folks will join and do face masks and watch a movie. That's been happening a lot. This recent cohort, they're no longer upcoming. They started on Monday. This recent cohort in LA has a morning algorithms meetup where they get together and do an algorithm before class. They also have an evening algorithms meetup where they get together and spend time with one another and talk about algorithms after class. And they have another one on Sunday. So damn, there's a part of me that says like, calm down. You need to pace yourselves and like do laundry and cook or something on Sundays. But that commitment and that drive is present because of the people in the community. So I'd say it's comparable. It's not equivalent, just because I don't feel comfortable saying it's equivalent. But it's comparable if you care enough. And so far, people care enough. And I love to see that. I think that extends from, honestly, the instructors and the staff at Codesmith. I have an abundance of caring, and I care a lot. But so does everyone else. Dave is the lead instructor in LA, incredible. Kyle out in New York, some of the best people I've had the opportunity to work with. And they bring that level of passion as well. So that's my final answer. Greg, does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally does make sense. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Tyler, I saw you up next with a question.
I think it kind of got answered. I was just going to say, ask, do you think the people in the cohort are being shortchanged at all by doing it remote? And if so, what would it be? Not really the whole, because I know you're not going to get that same experience as you would if you were in person. It'd be impossible, but in the sense of like the outcomes and things like that.
Great question. So yeah, I mentioned how, it's not going to be equivalent, but it's going to be comparable. In terms of outcomes, we've seen no dip or degradation in outcomes from a monetary sense or from a hiring sense. And the hiring sense and like how quickly people get jobs and the kind of jobs they're getting. And that to me is really surprising. It's shocking. And the reason for me it's shocking is just because I'm always waiting for some other shoe to drop, or like, the COVID situation is apparent in here. So people have to be hiring less, yes. And yes, people are hiring less. Codesmith grads are still getting the same kind of outcomes that they were getting before. That to me is incredible. I thought for sure I'd see that dip. And the fact that I haven't, I think is a testament to the hiring program that we have. So any sort of bit that you're missing out on in the program is the in-person easiness of being able to bump into and connect with other people. I will say, however, that working in a remote setting gives you extra benefits. So if there's ever a time in the future where you want to work remote, having gone through this process and gotten incredibly skilled at working remotely in a collaborative setting with other people, an incredible asset to your resume. It's not, you're not leading with that. You're not like, I'm a remote worker, but does benefit you if you do want a remote job. Have you ever worked on a remote team? Yes, I have. I've worked abundantly on a remote team. So that, I think, is actually an incredible benefit. You get a lot more experience and intentionality around how you pair program and what it looks like to share your screen, and a reinforcement of some of the things that are just honestly easy to skip over when you're on site. It's real easy when you're on site, two people sitting at a computer, for someone to say, oh, change that bit of code right there and point at the screen. Never. That's never the way to do it. If you're ever in a technical interview and you're like, oh yeah, I think there's a mistake right over there. That's not a good look, friends. In a remote setting, you can't do that. It makes no sense. I'm pointing at my camera like a weirdo. I can't do that. However, I do have to say, I think on line 249, after we declare our label in memory, we're not using the right operator after our assignment or something. You're now talking about line numbers, and you have to do that because you're in a remote setting. So there are some benefits from it as well. The hiring program is absolutely incredible. So the hiring program has been kind of the thing that was most unexpected for me. I'm not a person that loves resume writing, and the process is intense at Codesmith to write a resume, but ultimately incredibly rewarding. It works. So I haven't seen a dip in outcomes. I also don't work on the outcomes day to day, but I do get the reports of folks that are hired and their amounts, and folks are still getting ridiculous offers that kind of blow me away. So yeah, I haven't seen a dip, Tyler. Good question though. Does that answer make sense?
Yes, it does. I want to say thank you. I have to take off right now, but to the class, if anyone wants to link up and pair program or just ask me questions, because I'm planning on going to the August cohort, I'll leave my name so you can connect with me on Slack and in my email as well. But thank you for the class.
Yes. Oh, Tyler, absolutely wonderful. Good shout, friend. Connect on CSX. Thanks for being here. Have a wonderful afternoon, evening. All right, up next, I saw Xiao.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for all this explanation, helps a lot. And I just kind of want to ask a question about the remote 9 months cohort, because that's what I'm trying to get into right now. I want to ask, how many people do you normally have in a cohort, and by comparison with the full-time one? Because I guess I do live in New York City, so technically I could also go to the New York City one. Obviously now it's all fully remote, but I just kind of want to know how many students will be there. And then I'm also curious about like the hiring support in the program. I mean, you kind of explained some, like, because my understanding is in the 9 months program, every student would be like located very differently. For example, I'm in New York City, but there might be students coming from other countries. And I'm hoping that you can explain a little bit of the hiring support in terms of students are from different countries. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful questions. Okay, so the cohort sizes, the number of people in each cohort. Right now, we found a sweet spot around 30. So in New York and LA, typically about 30 people a cohort. This is what it was like on site, and this is still the amounts that are starting for both programs in a remote setting. I think on Monday we had our LA cohort start, and they have 31 people. In New York, upcoming, we have 34 people that will be in that cohort. But sometimes people like change last minute, and so usually we're a little over 30, and folks defer or something comes up. So that's really normal for us. The part-time program, same thing. That's the focus for the part-time program as well. Right now we have a slightly smaller cohort in that is currently in the program because they're the beta cohort. So we wanted a slightly smaller cohort to iron out any kinks and do that kind of stuff. But around 30 is our sweet spot and what you can expect. Sometimes, however, like for me, when I went through the program, it was at a weird time and stuff came up. It's like some folks dropped, and I think there were like 16 people in my cohort. So sometimes it's lower. There's a trade-off for that. It's good. My network is a little smaller because my group of people are less of them, but I'm still connected to the alumni group and all of that support is still there. So I have access to the broader network, but it can vary. But 30's around where we cap it. So for hiring support in the hiring program, both in New York, LA, and the part-time program is incredibly specific. And what I mean by that is there are no limits to the amount of hiring support that you can get and what hiring support like timelines look like. If you've come through Codesmith, you get access to the hiring support of Codesmith forever. And what that means, kind of in a most literal sense, is oftentimes, and this is usually how it's implemented or how people utilize it, is you come through the program and you go through resume writing. You go through coming up with your technical narrative. Your technical narrative is not a thing that I had ever even heard of before I came to Codesmith. But that is like, why am I doing this? What's my passion? What's my connection to this? You all did like a miniature version of your technical narrative when you introduced yourselves today. That kind of stuff, you have to have cemented down because you're going into interviews. And if you come in and say like, oh, well, I wanted to code because it pays a lot of money. I personally respect that answer. Interviewers do not, and they don't want to hear it. So you have to have like a personal connection, a thing that you care about that makes you want to do this. So you work on your technical narrative. You work on whiteboarding. You practice whiteboarding. You do the whole thing. You have mock interviews with folks. Really, really powerful stuff. So you get those jitters out. And you do a bad job. And you should do a pretty bad job the first couple times you interview. It's going to happen. But you also get practice interviewing. So you eventually start going through a whole lot of interviews because you go through the outreach process. We show you how to apply, how to do a double down, how to do a follow-up, how to present yourself in a cover letter. Cover letters for software jobs are different than they are for other jobs. So go through all of that. Afterwards, you might get a take-home test, or you might get scheduled for an interview with Amazon, and you're like, I'm nervous. Normal. So the most common kind of hiring support that students use is mock phone screens, mock whiteboarding sessions, and help with their take-home test. So the help is not going to be like, here, we do it for you. It's going to be pair programming with you, asking you leading questions, getting you to your own answers to a problem. For mock interviews, whether that's a mock phone screen or a mock technical, we have folks that will go through and ask you to do whiteboarding questions, and we're going to make you whiteboard on like an iPad, and you're going to have to like do it remotely. That kind of stuff is utilized by folks that just graduated and also utilized by folks that are working on their second and third jobs because they know that it's a way to be as prepared as possible. I don't know about you, but the job search process, usually not the most fun thing. So people want to be as prepared and get done with it ASAP. So they utilize those services continually. They'll come back and be like, hey, I got a thing coming up. I think one of the folks that I went through the program with has an upcoming interview with Amazon. And I think it's their second job after Codesmith. And they're like, I really want this one. So they're coming back and they're doing some mock whiteboarding. That kind of stuff, always available to you. Now, what gets tailored and different and adjusted for folks that are coming from not the US is how you write your resume, how you write your cover letter, how to present your technical narrative, and how that may pertain to that particular area of the world, that country, that region, and an adjustment for you to know salary expectations. Because guess what, friends? Engineers are way overpaid in the US. You get tons of money in the US. You get less money other places. So if you want to work in the UK, you're going to make less money. The cap is lower. That's just how it is. So knowing that and having some information, incredibly beneficial. That being said, you still get to make that decision and go wherever you want. We've had folks that have come out of Codesmith from the New York program and gone into a job in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, just like first job where they wanted to go. One of the folks that went through CS Prep and recently graduated from Codesmith New York is an American that has been living for the last many years in Germany. And now she's back in Germany and found a job and is working in Germany using all the same processes that work here by and large, with minor tweaks for the specific locations. Now, what those tweaks are for those specific locations, not me. I teach JavaScript. I don't teach the hiring program. I teach pieces of the hiring program, like how to answer JavaScript questions, but less on those nuances of the different countries. So I have less insight into that. But does that make sense and sound like an
Yes.
answer?
Thank you so much. That was very helpful.
course.
Thank you.
Yeah, love it. Great question. Shall I appreciate that. That's the last question from Hans. I see Rob's in the chat with no mic. Rob's, I appreciate you mentioning you have no mic. Rob's says, hey, Shane, to your point, is there anything that we should keep in mind to make this 3-month journey sustainable? On Sundays, some people still come together. What do you feel is the balance, brings out the best outcomes? Cool. So this is a marathon, not a sprint. Even at 3 months, marathon. At 9 months, it's a marathon. What you need to do to sustain and make sure that's sustainable for you is listen to yourself, which is if you need to take a break on Sundays, do that. Zone out, read a book, watch a movie, fall asleep. If you have some time to do a little bit of programming, cool, but watch yourself. Make sure you're not getting resentful of code or grumpy and upset of yourself or towards other people. Check on yourself and make sure that you are okay with that. If you have a struggle connecting to yourself and listening to what those emotions are saying, cool, welcome to the party. Know that you can adjust and ask others. And my kind of carte blanche blanket recommendation is try not to work on Sundays. Try to go home at a decent hour. 10 p.m. is fine. 9 p.m. is great. Try not to think that this is the only time you have to learn. This is a time to focus and get the most out of what Codesmith is offering you. But if you push yourself too far and burn out, you're not going to finish, and it's going to really suck. So find that balance by listening to yourself. And to get a guideline, a starting place, stay until 9, most nights, maybe 10 sometimes, and rest on Sundays. I guarantee you what's more important than getting that extra stretch feature for your project is some rest on a Sunday. Taking care of yourself, buying some food, staring out the window, do what it takes to rest up. So that's it for my answer. Ooh, Shao, I wanted to mention a thing just based on a comment you made. I wanted to mention one other thing. So this might be weird coming from the teacher of the part-time program, but I do want to say, if you're a person that is not obligated full-time, so if you could take the full-time program, given your available hours, my recommendation is to do so, to take the full-time program, not the part-time program. If you're busy full-time, if you have other obligations, other stuff that you're doing, part-time program is wonderful. Yes, join, love to have you. But if you have the ability or the availability to take the full-time program, I encourage you to do that. And the reason for that is it will push you. If you don't have other obligations and you take the part-time program, you will find yourself in a mindset of, I have extra time. I can study a little more on this particular unit. I can do outside of class reading. I have more time outside of class to read up, to practice, to study, to really understand these concepts. And I argue that that is missing the point of Codesmith. It's not to go out and grab all the knowledge and put it in your brain and like have the knowledge points. Because all the knowledge you learn is going to fade if you don't use it all the time. You're never ever going to collect all the knowledge, right? It's just not possible. However, What you are going to collect and what you're going to grow and develop as a skill, because it's a skill, is the ability to onboard, to learn new things effectively and quickly. So if you take that time, do the part-time program and like really spend a lot of time outside of class, researching, practicing, more time than in class, just focused on the material. What you do is kind of shortchange yourself by not pushing yourself as hard as you would need to and could be pushing yourself in the full-time program. Essentially what I kind of compare it to is when you're on a job and you're working, you may on a Monday come into work and you have your stand-up and you get a ticket to work on a bug, to fix a thing. And you have no idea what the hell that technology is or how to do the fix. You don't know. But it's due by Wednesday. You have some stuff to do. So you got to go work. You got to go figure it out. And if you've given yourself the correct or the hopefully intended skills from Codesmith, you can do that. You might not know. You'll go start looking at documentation. You'll look at Stack Overflow and read between the lines to understand why people are suggesting what they're suggesting. And you'll know how to debug and figure that stuff out quickly. Now, if you went through a program and like part-time and didn't spend your time in class working, but instead also studied outside of class, it's a bit like making extra time up out of nowhere. You're now not as quick to learn those pieces. You're now taking 9 months instead of 3 because you want to take things a little slower. Not an inherently bad idea, but could lead you to not develop the skill set as powerfully as you could if you went through the full-time program. Keep in mind, I'm only speaking about taking the part-time program when you don't have other obligations. So if you have other obligations, the part-time program is designed explicitly to get you speedily, quickly developing those skills. But if you're studying a whole bunch outside of class to try to be prepared for class, it can work against you. So does that make sense, Xiao? Oh, sorry, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for your suggestion. I'll definitely consider it since I'm in New York City. I do have a 5-year-old, and New York City, yeah, and New York City school next semester is not looking that good. He might be at home for a whole either half a school year or another full school year. That's why I was shooting for the August one, but my understanding is once I get in, I heard I can switch to a different cohort. So if the situation change, I'll definitely consider your suggestion. Thank you so much.
Totally. I love that. And taking care of and having a 5-year-old in the house, full-time obligation. Full-time obligation.
Thank you for the understanding.
So,
thank you.
Of course. I just wanted to speak on that. Xiao, thanks for bringing that up. It's just a thing I didn't plan on talking about, but here I did. And I hope it was beneficial. Priscilla seems to say it was helpful.
Thank you.
Yay, that's great. That's it for class, y'all, or for this workshop. If you have any more questions, holler at me. You can find me on Slack. My name is Shane Taylor, like it says there in Zoom. No LA at the end. I look like I'm in a squirrel outfit. It's the squirrel. Oh, I'm in the wrong account. I'm in a ridiculous squirrel outfit. So you can find me on the Codesmith X Slack channel. That's CSX. Is the learning platform that we have. To find it on Slack, it's codesmithx.slack.com. You can also email me, shane@codesmith.io, and that's it. Have a wonderful evening, afternoon, night, wherever you're tuning in from. Jay, nice to see you. Priscilla, nice to see you. Chris, nice to see you. Xiao, Hart, have a good night, everyone. Take care. Bye. See you, Greg.